She never rushed anything anymore. 45 years old, civilian clothes, long sleeves despite the July heat, hair pulled back tight, not for appearance but control. Her paperwork said due civilian contractor. Her posture said she'd learned long ago that attention was dangerous. The guard studied the papers, then her face, then the papers again. "You can head to training command," he said finally. "Master Sergeant Callahan expecting you." She nodded once and stepped through the gate. The moment her boots touched the red Georgia clay, something old stirred. Not nostalgia, muscle memory, the body remembering before the mind allowed it. Inside the command building, the air conditioning hit like a wall. Master Sergeant Wyatt Callahan looked up from his desk, eyes sharp, already measuring her. "You're late," he said. "Clock says 5:58, she replied evenly. "Brief at 600. A flicker, not irritation, interest. "You the consultant they sent." "I'm who they sent." He stood tall, scar along his jaw pale against tanned skin. The look he gave her was familiar. Inventory, assessment, doubt. "This isn't a classroom," he said. "You won't be running PowerPoints." "Understood." Alpha companies waiting, fresh from basic, think they know everything. She didn't smile, most do. Callahan's jaw tightened. He turned and walked, not waiting to see if she followed. She did. The training yard baked under the rising sun. 24 recruits stood in loose formation, youth still clinging to their faces. When she stepped into view behind Callahan, the whispers started immediately. "Who's that?" "Looks like somebody's mom." "Bet she's gone by lunch." Catherine Ashford heard every word. She always did. Callahan snapped them to attention and introduced her without ceremony. No praise, no explanation, just a name and a role. "Ms. Ashford's observing today," he said. "Treat her like any instructor." A few nods, a few smirks. "PT assessment," Callahan added. "She observes by doing." That earned laughter, quick, careless, unearned. Catherine said nothing. She moved into position. The push-ups started. Bodies hit the ground hard. Breath turned ragged fast. Arms shook. Faces reddened. She moved through the count with perfect economy, breathing steady, eyes distant. By 70, recruits began to drop. By 90, most were fighting themselves. She finished 100 and stood. Not winded, not flushed. The whispers changed. Sprints came next, 400 meters under load. The recruits ran like they were being chased. Catherine ran like she was being timed by something that mattered. She didn't fight the weight. She worked with it. She crossed fourth overall. The obstacle course broke the rest. Where they slammed into walls, she climbed them. Where they burned strength, she used technique. Where they panicked under wire, she flowed. She crossed the finish line in 4 minutes and 18 seconds. The board blinked. New record. Silence settled like dust. At the range, she inspected the rifle the way you inspected something that might save your life. Slow, deliberate. The recruits watched her hands, not realizing they were watching decades. Her shots didn't sound different. They looked different. One hole, then one hole pretending to be 3. Someone laughed nervously. "Lucky." Callahan asked her to explain. She did: numbers, wind, physics, trigger weight, follow-through, no pride, no flourish. Just truth. The laughter died. In the sand pit, Callahan handed her a rubber knife. "Attack me," he said. She hesitated for exactly 1 second. 4 seconds later, he was on the ground, breath knocked out of him, blade at his throat, arm locked in a position that would have ended his career if she'd wanted it to. She released him and offered a hand. He took it, not looking at her the same way. The sun climbed, the heat pressed, training continued, but something had shifted. The recruits watched now, not with mockery. With caution. During a water break, her sleeve pulled back. Just an inch. Black ink curved, intentional. One of the recruits Mercer noticed, said nothing, filed it away. Then the yard went still. Colonel Randall Garrett had arrived. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. He watched Catherine move through drills with the attention of a man who recognized patterns others couldn't see. When the drill ended, he stepped forward. "Roll up your left sleeve." Not a request. Catherine hesitated. A flicker passed through her eyes, something old, something heavy. Then she rolled it up. The serpent revealed itself slowly, coiled around a blade, fangs bared, ink faded by time, not meaning. Garrett leaned in. "That's a black viper mark," he said quietly. The effect was immediate. Faces drained of color, instructors stiffened. Garrett straightened and addressed the formation. "You've been laughing at someone who survived trials most of you will never hear about," he said. "That isn't a tattoo. It's a receipt, paid in blood and silence." Someone started to speak. Garrett raised one finger. The sound died. "Where did you earn it?" "Kuwait," Catherine said. "February 1991. The math hit hard. 17, she added. The silence after that was different, heavier. Garrett spoke of the program, of how few survived, of how the best never talked. Then he turned away, already done. Training resumed. But nothing was the same. Catherine moved among them, correcting quietly, teaching without ego, showing instead of telling. When rifles jammed, she asked questions. When walls defeated them, she showed angles. No speeches, no praise. Just presence. At dusk, Callahan asked her why she was there. "Someone asked me to be," she said. "Someone who understood silence." That night she drove away alone, touching the old compass at her throat. Behind her, recruits lay awake, staring at ceilings, understanding for the first time that real strength didn't announce itself. It endured. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did the quiet ones always wake before the bugle, like their bodies refused to forget what danger sounded like? Catherine Ashford was already dressed when the lights snapped on in the barracks across the yard. She didn't need alarms, hadn't for decades. Her body kept its own time, calibrated by nights when sleep meant vulnerability and dawn meant survival. She stood alone near the edge of the training yard, long sleeves again despite the heat already gathering. The tattoo was hidden. It always was. What had been revealed yesterday wasn't meant to stay exposed. Truth, once acknowledged, didn't need repeating. Across the yard, Alpha Company formed up. They were quieter now, less swagger, more weight in their movements. They didn't look at her the same way. Not awe, not fear. "Attention." Master Sergeant Callahan stepped forward, voice cutting clean. "Today isn't about showing off. Today's about understanding why things work. Ms. Ashford will be running primary instruction." That earned a pause, a recalibration. She stepped forward, no speech, no build-up. "You know how to shoot," she said. "Most of you don't know why your shots land where they do. That gap gets people killed." She lifted an M4, held it loosely, like an extension of thought rather than muscle. "We close that gap today." They moved to the range. Sun climbing, air thick. She spoke in fragments the way truths often arrived. "Wind isn't invisible. Mirage tells you its story. Heat shimmer bends light before it bends bullets. Gravity doesn't care about intent, only angle." She showed them how to read, how to feel, how to stop guessing. Private Dalton Mercer stood near the middle, notebook already out. He wrote fast, eyes flicking between her hands and the targets. He stopped trying to impress anyone. He wanted to understand. "Reticle math," she said, tapping the optic. "These marks aren't decoration, they're language, learn to read it." They did slowly, painfully, shots tightened, groups shrank. When Mercer fired again, his cluster tightened by half. He exhaled, surprised. "Better," she said behind him, "still wrong." He flinched. She leaned in, voice low. Wind's stronger than you think. Don't trust what you feel, trust what you see. He adjusted, fired. The group shrank again. She moved on. By mid-morning, sweat soaked through uniforms. Pride had been replaced by fatigue and focus. She transitioned them to movement, how to disappear without stopping, how to move without announcing yourself to anyone watching. Motion is louder than color, she said, already moving. The eye hunts change. She flowed through brush, pausing not randomly but deliberately. The recruits tried to track her. They failed. One by one, they attempted the same. Most were called out before halfway. Noise, she said, breathing, predictable rhythm. Mercer went later. He moved slower, controlled, froze when he felt exposed, adjusted when he sensed error. Better, she called, still breathing too loud. He slowed more, made it. She nodded once. That nod meant more than praise. Urban training followed, tight spaces, fatal funnels, corners that lied. She didn't dramatize it. In buildings, distance disappears, she said. Indecision kills faster than bad decisions. They practiced entries, cleared rooms, called corners, repeated until words felt automatic. Then came simulations. She played hostile force. She dismantled them. Not with speed, with positioning, with patience. When Mercer's team finally flanked instead of charging, she took paint to the shoulder and stopped the scenario. Why, she asked him. Because staying where you expected us was death. She studied him. Correct, adaptation is survival. The afternoon heat crushed them. MREs tasted like dust and salt. No one joked. No one complained. 3 recruits whispered later. Doubt crept back in. Stories always invited it. She's good, one said, but 17, come on. Mercer felt something twist in his chest. He didn't argue at first, he listened. Then he spoke. Colonel Garrett vouched for her. People make mistakes. That's when Catherine stepped into the bay. She hadn't raised her voice, didn't need to. You want proof, she asked. The photos said everything words didn't. Black and white, desert light, faces too young for what followed. She didn't linger, didn't argue. Questioning isn't wrong, she said. Blind faith is. She left them with that. That night Mercer couldn't sleep, not from fear, from weight, from understanding that survival often belonged to the ones who carried ghosts quietly. Before dawn, Callahan's message came. Final exercise, 6 hours, evasion, force on force. Catherine read it twice, closed her eyes. She was ready. The trucks rolled before sunrise, engines low, forest waiting. Alpha Company unloaded into terrain that looked forgiving until you stepped inside it. Pine and shadow. Sound swallowed wrong steps. Callahan laid out the rules. Objective, extraction, failure meant recycling. Then he stepped back. They had 30 minutes. Mercer took charge, not because of rank but because no one else did. Navigation, security, spacing. Catherine watched, said nothing. Release came, they moved. First contact came fast. Shots cracked, paint bloomed, panic tried to take hold. Mercer shouted, regrouped them, pulled them out. 3 gone. They learned the cost of hesitation. They adapted. Hours blurred, hunger, thirst, sweat stinging eyes. They ambushed instead of ran. Turned, hunted into hunters. Catherine stayed on the edge, observing, advising only when asked. She saw mistakes, let them happen. She saw growth, let it solidify. The final blocking position waited at the extraction. Prepared patient. Mercer planned anyway. Suppression, flank, assault. They executed. Paint flew. Silence fell. 13 made it. Catherine exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Back at base, exhaustion settled deep. Pride tried to surface, she didn't let it. Mercer approached her before dismissal. "How do you live with surviving when others did?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "You don't live with it," she said finally. "You live because of it." That night she touched the compass again. Thought of a woman who'd stood in front of a blast so a 17-year-old girl could grow old. Promises kept. Sometimes strength doesn't roar. It endures. And sometimes survival isn't about being chosen. It's about being worthy of the cost. What does it feel like when respect finally arrives, but you're too tired to celebrate it? Catherine Ashford felt it before she saw it. The shift, the quiet recalibration in how Alpha Company moved the morning after the final exercise. No glances filled with doubt anymore. No sideways smirks. No whispered jokes that tried to shrink what they didn't yet understand. Respect had settled in, not loudly, not cleanly, but like dust after a long march. Unavoidable, earned. She stood near the edge of the yard as the sun rose, long sleeves again, tattoo hidden, just another civilian contractor on paper. Inside, her body was already braced. The night had been short. Sleep came in fragments, broken by old sounds that never truly faded. Metal scraping. A shouted name cut short. The hollow pressure of waiting to see who didn't answer roll call. She pushed it down. Master Sergeant Callahan addressed the formation with a different tone now. Not indulgent, not impressed, but measured. "Yesterday showed me who adapts when plans collapse," he said. "Today shows me who holds it together when the pressure doesn't let up." He turned slightly toward Catherine. "Ms. Ashford will observe, advise if you ask, same rules." No laughter this time. They moved out for extended drills, longer movements, degraded conditions, layered stress. Less instruction, more ambiguity. Catherine watched decision-making break down in small, revealing ways. Fatigue stripped pretense. Hunger sharpened tempers. Fear crept in quietly. That was where truth lived. Mercer had taken on an informal role now. Not a leader by rank but by gravity. Others looked to him before acting. He noticed. It made him uncomfortable. Responsibility always did. During a navigation exercise, a junior recruit froze when his compass readings didn't match terrain. Panic bloomed fast. Voices rose. Catherine approached slowly, didn't touch him. "What's wrong?" she asked. "My bearings don't make sense," he said. "I think I messed it up." "You didn't," she said. "You're tired. That makes simple things feel impossible." She knelt, traced the map with one finger. "You're here. Terrain's lying to you because fatigue changes perception. Trust the process, not your fear." He swallowed, adjusted, found the route. She stood and walked away without waiting for thanks. Later, Callahan pulled her aside. "You're not just teaching skills," he said quietly. "You're teaching restraint." She didn't respond at first. "Restraint keeps people alive longer than aggression," she said finally. "It buys time." Callahan nodded. "You learned that the hard way." "Yes." They both knew what that meant. The afternoon brought a surprise, not on the schedule, no warning. A visiting evaluation team. Different uniforms, clean boots, eyes that assessed without empathy, the kind of people who turned experience into metrics. They watched drills, took notes, whispered. Catherine felt something tighten in her chest, not fear, but an old irritation. These were the kinds of people who had never known what it felt like to be erased on paper, to exist without acknowledgement, to do work that officially never happened. One of them approached her during a break. "You're impressive," he said too casually. "Background's unconventional." She met his eyes, held them. "Most useful things are," she said. He smiled thinly. "Ever considered consulting at a higher level?" She knew what he meant. Boards, slides, abstractions. "No," she said. "I prefer work that leaves fewer witnesses." His smile faltered. The evaluators left without ceremony. Callahan watched them go. They won't forget you, he said. That's unfortunate, she replied. That night, Catherine sat alone in her temporary apartment, folder open on the table. Photographs spread out like fragments of a life that never fit neatly together. She touched each face in turn. Michael, Sarah, James, David. Patricia. She lingered there longest. I kept the promise, she whispered. I'm still keeping it. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She stared at it for a long moment before answering. Yes. A pause, then a voice she hadn't heard in years, older now, slower. Catherine, it's Garrett. Her chest tightened despite herself. Yes, sir. I won't take much of your time, he said. I heard about the evaluation team. She exhaled, then you know they'll talk. They already are, he said, which means it's time you decide something. She closed her eyes. I decided a long time ago, she said. Then you should know, Garrett continued, they're reopening some files, old ones, not to expose, just to reconcile gaps. That word again, gaps. They won't find much, she said. No, he agreed, but they might find you. Silence stretched. You don't owe anyone visibility, Garrett said carefully. But the people you're teaching, they'll carry pieces of you forward whether you like it or not. She looked at the compass on the table. That's the risk, she said, and the point. When the call ended, she sat in the dark for a long time, weighing ghosts against futures. The next morning, Alpha Company assembled for what they thought would be another drill. Instead, Callahan dismissed them early. Graduation prep, he said. Clean gear, clear heads. They didn't scatter immediately. A few lingered. Mercer approached Catherine, hesitant. Ma'am, he said, some of us wanted to say thank you. She studied his face, saw exhaustion layered with resolve. You don't thank people for doing what keeps you alive, she said. You use it. He nodded, we will. That afternoon, Catherine packed her truck. Same routine, same care, no souvenirs, no photos. She walked the training yard one last time. The red clay held footprints already fatting. Before she reached the gate, Callahan stopped her. You changed them, he said. She shook her head. They changed themselves. He hesitated. Will we see you again? She considered the question honestly. Maybe, she said, if someone asks me to keep another promise. She drove away as the sun dipped low, the base shrinking in her mirrors. Behind her, Alpha Company prepared to move forward, carrying lessons they didn't yet realize would surface years later, in places far from Georgia, when fear tried to take over and something quieter held the line. Catherine Ashford merged onto the road, compass warm against her chest. She didn't look back. Some stories aren't meant to be revisited. They're meant to be lived forward, quietly, carefully, with purpose. Because survival isn't about being remembered. It's about leaving behind something that endures when you're gone. What happens when the past doesn't stay behind, when it steps out of the dark and asks to be answered? Catherine Ashford was 3 hours into the drive when the feeling returned. Not fear, not memory, something sharper, the sense of being noticed. She eased off the accelerator, letting a pickup pass, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. Nothing obvious, just open road and late afternoon sun stretching shadows across the asphalt. She told herself it was nothing. She said that before. Her phone vibrated once in the console. She didn't touch it immediately, let it buzz again, then a third time. She pulled into a rest stop, killed the engine, and finally looked. A secure number, one she hadn't seen in years. She closed her eyes for a full breath before answering. Go. Catherine, a woman's voice said, calm, professional, threaded with urgency. We need to talk. I'm done, Catherine replied. You were told that. We were, the voice said, and we respected it until yesterday. Catherine leaned back against the seat, staring at the sky through the windshield. What changed? A name, the woman said. Black Viper. Silence stretched, thick and heavy. That name doesn't exist, Catherine said. It does now, the woman replied. Someone whispered it in the wrong room. Catherine's jaw tightened. Then handle it. We're trying, but there's movement, old networks, new money, and a mission profile that resembles you. Don't flatter me. This isn't flattery, the woman said. It's risk. Catherine glanced around the empty rest stop. A family unloading snacks, a couple arguing quietly, ordinary life moving on unaware. What do you want? Catherine asked. Just a conversation, the woman said, in person. No. Catherine. I said no. The woman paused. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. They're asking questions about Kuwait, she said softly, about the girl who shouldn't have survived. Catherine's hand tightened around the phone. Where? She asked. Norfolk, the woman said. Fort Eustis tonight. The call ended. Catherine sat there long after the screen went dark. She felt the old weight settle in her chest, the familiar pull between walking away and stepping back into something that never really released you. She started the engine and turned east. Fort Eustis hadn't changed much. Same quiet confidence, same illusion of order. Catherine parked under a tree and walked in without escort, moving like someone who knew exactly where she was going because she did. The conference room was small, controlled. The woman from the phone call stood when Catherine entered, late 40s, intelligence posture, sharp eyes softened by experience. Claire Bennett, she said, thank you for coming. I didn't come for you, Catherine replied. Claire nodded, I know. She slid a folder across the table. Catherine didn't open it. Say it, Catherine said, don't show me. Claire took a breath. There's chatter about a contractor team operating in Eastern Europe. Black market extraction, targeted eliminations. They're using your old methods. That's not a compliment. No, Claire agreed. It's a fingerprint. Catherine finally opened the folder. Photos, grainy, night shots. Bodies placed carefully, not cruelly but deliberately. Precision without spectacle. Her stomach tightened. That's not me, Catherine said. But it's someone who learned from the same place, Claire replied. Same program, same doctrine. Catherine closed the folder. How many? She asked. So far, 7 confirmed. And you think I can stop it? I think you're the only one who can identify it, Claire said. You don't have to touch a weapon, just tell us what we're looking at. Catherine laughed quietly, no humor in it. That program was buried, she said. Burned down. Everyone left was either broken or dead. Or silent, Claire said. Catherine met her eyes. Silence isn't the same as innocence. Claire hesitated. There's more. Catherine waited. One of the names that surfaced, Claire continued, was Patricia Harlan. The room felt smaller. She's dead, Catherine said. That's what the file says, Claire replied, but the file has gaps. Gaps? Catherine stood abruptly, chair scraping. You don't get to say her name. Claire didn't move. If she's alive. She isn't, Catherine cut in, and if she were, she wouldn't do this. You're sure? Catherine's voice dropped. She saved lives, she didn't sell death. Silence settled again. Finally, Catherine exhaled. Give me the data, she said. I'll look, that's all. Claire slid a drive across the table. And Catherine, she added gently, if this pulls you back in. It won't, Catherine said. I'm just closing a door. She checked into a motel near the base. Cheap, quiet, familiar, the kind of place where no one asked questions. The data was thorough, too thorough. She spent hours reviewing patterns, routes, timelines, kill zones. Her fingers moved automatically, mapping connections her mind didn't want to acknowledge. By 200, she was certain. This isn't a ghost, she whispered. It's a mirror. The operator wasn't copying her. They were correcting her, refining what she'd once been taught to do under pressure and fear. Someone younger, hungrier, less restrained. Someone who hadn't learned the final lesson. At dawn, Catherine stepped outside, breathing in cold air. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from something closer to grief. She thought of Alpha Company, of Mercer, of young faces still believing survival came with rules. She dialed Claire. "I know who trained them," Catherine said. "And why?" "Why?" Claire asked. "Because they think the world only listens to force," Catherine replied, "and because no one taught them when to stop." There was a pause. "Will you help us?" Claire asked. Catherine looked at the horizon, light creeping over the trees. "I won't lead," she said. "I won't wear a badge, and I won't be recorded." "Understood." "But I'll confront them," Catherine continued. "Not to kill, to end it." Claire exhaled slowly. "That may not be possible." Catherine's eyes hardened. "It is for me." She hung up and went back inside, packing with practiced efficiency. No hesitation now, just resolve. As she zipped the bag, her reflection caught her eye in the mirror. Older, scarred, still standing. She rolled up her sleeve. The black viper stared back at her, not as a threat but a reminder. Some legacies don't fade. They wait. And sometimes, the most dangerous mission isn't the one that asks you to pull the trigger. It's the one that asks you to face what you left behind and decide, one last time, who you are willing to be. What do you do when the person you're hunting might be the person you once were? Catherine Ashford didn't announce her arrival. She never had. The airfield outside Ramstein was quiet in the way only military places ever were, orderly, efficient, pretending nothing extraordinary passed through it at odd hours of the night. She stepped off the transport with a single bag and no visible insignia. No rank, no unit, just a woman in neutral clothes moving with intent. Claire Bennett waited near the edge of the hangar. She looked relieved, which irritated Catherine more than it should have. "You said you wouldn't lead," Claire said as they walked. "I'm not," Catherine replied. "I'm identifying a problem." "And if identification isn't enough?" Catherine didn't answer. The intelligence room was dim, screens casting pale light across tired faces. Operators nodded at her without questions. They'd been told just enough to know she mattered and not enough to know why. Catherine studied the map. Eastern Europe, border towns, transit routes that avoided attention, kill zones chosen not for spectacle but certainty. "They're disciplined," one analyst said. "No chatter, no digital footprint beyond necessity." "They're not trying to disappear," Catherine said quietly. "They want to be seen, just not caught." She pointed to a cluster of marks. "Here and here, same timing, same extraction window. This is training behavior." "Meaning?" Claire asked. "Meaning they're running drills," Catherine said, "testing themselves." A younger operative shifted uncomfortably. "On real people." Catherine's jaw tightened. "That's how it starts." She requested surveillance feeds, watched hours of grainy footage, paused, rewound, zoomed. "There," she said. A figure crossing a street, posture wrong for a civilian, head moving slightly too much, scanning. "Leader?" Claire asked. "No," Catherine replied. "Student trying to prove they're ready." She leaned back, rubbing her eyes. "They're close," she said, "and they want contact." As if summoned, an alert chimed. "Possible sighting," an analyst called. "Rural compound, thermal picked up movement, 5 individuals." Catherine stood. "That's bait." "And if we don't take it?" Claire asked. "They escalate," Catherine replied. "They need a response to validate themselves." Claire nodded slowly. "Then we move." They approached at dawn. Fog clung low, muffling sound. The team moved with care, weapons ready but restrained. Catherine stayed back, watching angles, reading space. She recognized the setup immediately. "Stop," she whispered into the comm. "This is wrong." Too late. The first shot cracked, not from the compound but from the tree line behind them. Ambush. Chaos tried to bloom. Catherine crushed it before it could take hold. "Fall back left," she snapped. "They're hurting you." The team adjusted. Barely. 2 went down, painted by sim rounds, but the message was clear. "They're not killing," Claire said, breath sharp in her ear. "No," Catherine replied. "They're sending one." The compound door opened. A woman stepped out. Younger, early 30s, hair pulled back tight, movements precise, familiar. Catherine's chest tightened. "Do not engage," Catherine said. "This is mine." The woman stopped 10 meters away, hands visible, calm. "You're late," the woman said. Catherine studied her face. Not cruel, not empty, just unfinished. "You're using my name," Catherine replied. The woman smiled faintly. "No, I'm answering it." "Who trained you?" Catherine asked. The woman tilted her head. "You did, indirectly." Catherine exhaled. "Then you missed the last lesson." "Maybe," the woman said. "Or maybe you ran before teaching it." That hit harder than any accusation. "Patricia didn't die for this," Catherine said quietly. The woman's expression flickered. "You knew her," she said. "I loved her," Catherine replied. Silence stretched. Wind moved the fog. "She told us stories," the woman said finally, "about restraint, about choosing not to pull the trigger." "Then why are you here?" Catherine asked. "Because the world didn't listen," the woman replied, "and we got tired of whispering." Catherine stepped closer, slowly, unarmed. "You think force makes truth louder," Catherine said. "It doesn't, it just drowns it." The woman's jaw tightened. "You don't get to judge, you left." "I stayed alive," Catherine said. "There's a difference." A beat. Then another. Finally, the woman lowered her gaze. "What happens now?" she asked. Catherine answered without hesitation. "You stop," she said. "You stand down, and you let me carry what you don't have to yet." "And if we do?" the woman asked. Catherine's voice softened. "Then you become exactly what they're waiting for you to be." Sirens echoed in the distance, distant, controlled. The woman looked past Catherine, then back. "You won't protect us," she said. "They'll bury us." Catherine nodded. "I know." She stepped back and raised her hands. "But I'll remember you as someone who still had a choice." The woman closed her eyes. When she opened them, the rifle fell to the ground. One by one, shapes emerged from the fog. Weapons lowered. The team moved in careful, quiet. As they were taken away, the woman met Catherine's eyes one last time. "You were supposed to stay," she said. Catherine swallowed. "I stayed long enough," she replied. Hours later, alone in a quiet room, Catherine washed her hands slowly, watching water run clear. Claire stood in the doorway. "You saved lives today," she said. Catherine shook her head. "I delayed damage." "That's still something." Catherine looked at her reflection, older now, tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. "I don't need credit," she said. "I need this to end." Claire nodded. "It will officially." Catherine smiled faintly. "Officially doesn't mean truth." As night fell, Catherine stepped outside, breathing cool air. The compass rested against her chest, steady. She faced the mirror and chosen restraint. That was the lesson no one taught you, until it was almost too late. Sometimes redemption isn't loud. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let the past keep bleeding into the future. What happens after the danger passes, when the noise fades and you're left alone with what you chose not to become? Catherine Ashford left before the debriefs finished. She didn't wait for conclusions or signatures or the quiet satisfaction people pretended not to feel when a crisis ended without headlines. She slipped out while the machinery of closure began turning, because she knew better than most that machines like that never truly shut down. The transport carried her west, then south. She watched lights scatter beneath the clouds, cities breathing quietly in the dark, unaware of how close they sometimes came to being remembered for the wrong reasons. Her body finally allowed exhaustion to surface. It crept in slowly, like water seeping through old cracks. She closed her eyes and saw faces, not the woman in the fog, not the analysts or soldiers, but the young recruits in Georgia, standing straighter than they had any right to so early in their lives. She hoped they never learned how fragile that line really was. When the plane touched down, dawn was just beginning to color the horizon. She rented a car under a name that wasn't hers and drove until the roads narrowed and the world grew quieter. No base, no fence, just trees, wind, and the honest weight of distance. The cabin sat where it always had, weathered, modest, forgettable by design. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, setting the bag down with care. The silence pressed in, not threatening, just present. This was where she came, when she needed to remember who she was without context. She slept for 12 hours. When she woke, sunlight spilled across the wooden floor. For a moment there was no past, no future, just breath, just stillness. She made coffee and sat on the steps outside, mug warming her hands. Somewhere in the distance a bird called, ordinary, unremarkable, perfect. Her phone buzzed once. She didn't rush to answer. When she finally looked, it was a single message from Claire. They stood down completely. No retaliation, file sealed. Catherine read it twice, set the phone face down. Sealed didn't mean erased, it never did, but it meant time, and sometimes time was enough. She stood and walked into the trees, moving without destination. Her body knew the paths even when her mind wandered. She stopped at a clearing where the ground dipped slightly, forming a natural bowl. She knelt there. For Patricia. For the girl she'd been. For the woman in the fog who had lowered her weapon and chosen something harder. "I did what I could," Catherine said softly. "I'm still doing it." The wind moved through the leaves, carrying the words away without judgment. Days passed, then more. She fixed what needed fixing, repaired a fence, split wood, read old books she'd never finished. At night she slept deeply, dreams quieter now, not gone but softened like edges worn smooth by handling. One afternoon, a truck pulled up the drive. She knew before she saw it. Catherine stood on the porch as Callahan stepped out, looking slightly out of place, without uniform, without authority. Just a man carrying something unsaid. "You always pick quiet places," he said. She nodded. "Noise doesn't add clarity." He handed her a folder. "You won't like it," he said. She took it anyway. Inside were letters, handwritten, uneven, some careful, some raw. Alpha Company. She read them slowly. About moments when fear tried to take over and didn't. About remembering to breathe, to wait, to choose restraint when aggression felt easier. About surviving situations they couldn't explain to anyone else. One line stopped her cold. "You taught us that silence isn't weakness. It's space to decide who we want to be." She closed the folder. "They're fine," Callahan said. "Not heroes, just steady." "That's all anyone ever needs to be," Catherine replied. Callahan hesitated. "They asked about you." She smiled faintly. "Tell them I'm busy." "With what?" "Living." He nodded, understanding more than he said. When he left, Catherine watched the dust settle behind the truck. She didn't feel the pull to follow. That surprised her. Then she realized why. She didn't need to disappear anymore. Weeks later, she drove back into town, small, unassuming. She volunteered at a range once a week, not teaching tactics, teaching safety, patience, respect. People assumed she was retired law enforcement. She let them. One afternoon, a young woman approached her after a session. Early 20s, nervous hands, determined eyes. "You don't talk much," the woman said. Catherine smiled. Talking fills space. I like how you wait, the woman continued, before correcting, before reacting. Catherine studied her, saw potential and the weight that came with it. Waiting gives you options, she said. Use them wisely. The woman nodded, grateful without fully understanding why. That night, Catherine sat by the window, compass resting in her palm. She traced its worn edges, thinking of all the places it had been, all the times it had pointed forward when everything else tried to pull her back. She didn't regret the life she'd lived. She regretted only the moments when she'd believed silence meant being alone. It didn't. Silence was where decisions formed, where restraint learned to stand its ground, where dignity didn't need witnesses. Her phone buzzed again, this time a different number. She answered, "Yes." A pause, then Mercer's voice, older now steadier. "Ma'am," he said, "I just wanted you to know we remembered." Catherine closed her eyes, a quiet warmth settling in her chest. "That's enough," she said. When the call ended, she sat in the dark, listening to the night breathe. The world would keep turning, new threats would rise, names would be whispered again someday. But not everything needed her anymore. And that, she realized, was the truest measure of success. Not recognition, not legacy, but knowing when to step forward and when to finally stand still. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is choose to live quietly, carrying the weight so others don't have to.